Good evening or morning or afternoon, whatever it might be, everybody. Welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. I'm Dad, and this is my den, and today I want to talk about The Phantom of the Opera. I just recently, in the last couple days, finished reading the book for the first time. It's one of those classics, and the sad thing about classics is we often intend to read them, and then we don't. I think because we kind of think we already know it. We already know the story of the Phantom of the Opera. We already know this story or that story. I don't need to, I'll get around to reading it later. I don't need to read it just yet. Well, read those classics because they're called classics for a reason, and Phantom of the Opera is no different. I really enjoyed the read, and so we're going to talk about the book, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about the movie, the original movie. So, Phantom of the Opera is written by Gaston Leroux published in 1909, 1910, depending on where and how it was published. It is generally regarded a horror classic. The Phantom of the Opera is regarded as a horror movie. But I got to tell you, it also has a lot of elements of true crime and adventure literature involved with it. Gaston Leroux was he was a reporter, a court reporter, so he had some knowledge of crime and all that, and he writes in a style that is, it's not real flowery. I think it's probably much more accessible to modern audiences than other works that would have been published at the time. And it's pretty well paced. The story begins sort of with a frame, because what we're actually getting is not just a story about these events that happen with the Phantom. No, what we're getting is a reporter who's sort of chasing down the story of the Phantom after the events have happened, quite a long time after the events have happened. And very few people who were involved are still accessible. And so he's going through records and diaries and police records to try to piece together what happened at the Paris Opera House. Story is set in 1880. So if we think of it as being written when it was published, these are events that happened 30 years ago to Gaston. He, like I said, he was a reporter. He was a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Phantom was actually written after another book that he wrote called The Mystery of the Yellow Room. So, and that was a detective story. So, yeah, it is a horror novel to an extent, but it's really more of a detective story and has some adventure elements in it. When you read it and give the movie another watch, and the 1925 silent film. And if you adapted it and called it Indiana Jones and the Phantom of the Opera, wouldn't feel that far off, really. So what's the story about? Well, it's about, like I said, events that occurred in 1880 in and around the Paris Opera House, and specifically with a singer, a young woman named Christine. She is loved by a young man, Raoul Comte de Chagny, I think is how you pronounce it. It takes a little while for those two characters to really connect. Raoul is definitely in love with her right from the start. He's not sure about her, and that's because she's kind of fallen under the spell of a mysterious man who is known as the Opera Ghost or the Phantom of the Opera. And she does finally manage to get away from him long enough to let Raoul know how she feels, but initially says yes, but I can't. And I have met, I believe they call him the spirit of music, and I am his. And okay, so there's this love triangle in the story, and gradually we discover who Eric, or who the Phantom is. His name is Eric, and through remembrances and through testimony, we get an idea of what he's done, of how he's impacted the opera, of the fear he's struck in people, and of the depths of his feelings for Christine. He is willing to kill for her. And obviously, I don't want to spoil the book, although the movie does a pretty good job of telling the story. So if you've seen the movie, you have a pretty good idea of it. But I don't want to spoil it, so I just want to kind of set it up for you. But it ultimately comes down to that love triangle and to how it plays out. In terms of the other important character in the story, really, is a man known only as the Persian. Great character. I really like him. He initially is only sort of seen in glances and furtively, and there's even some idea that maybe the Persian is the Phantom of the Opera. But eventually he comes into the story in a much more important way. And it's his own remembrances that fill in a lot of the gaps for the most adventurous part of the story. Because while, there's the romance angle, it almost, they delve underneath the Paris Opera House. These different levels, cellars beneath it, and this lake underneath the Opera House. And on the shores of this lake is where Eric has built his home and where he wants to keep Christine. And there are death traps, and there are weird events that occur underground. It's spooky, but again, there's also this sort of, you could sort of see Indiana Jones making his way down there with his bullwhip and trying to find Christine. There's that adventure aspect to it as well, which is fun. The death traps are very interesting. Maybe a little drawn out, but not too bad. There's so much to recommend in this book, and one of the things I enjoyed the most is that while the Phantom, his motivations are well explained, but they never become excuses for his behavior. He remains a villain, but maybe he's a somewhat sympathetic villain, or if not sympathetic, understandable. It's so really, it's a really good book. It's not a really long read. I think just about anybody could get something out of this. It's very enjoyable. But of course, can't really talk about the book in this day and age without also touching on the silent film from 1925. It's a pretty good adaptation of the book. I've seen the movie a couple times, although it has been a little while. So I just rewatched it so I could kind of compare and contrast a little better. It's a good adaptation. It hits the highlights pretty well. I mean, like most adaptations of book to movie, it's a bit of a cursory, telling of the story. It cuts things out. It does make a few changes that I think they don't hurt it as a film, but they do hurt the story overall. Specifically, the Persian is changed to Inspector Ledoux, and but he mostly acts like the Persian, but a lot of what the Persian does is sort of cut out of this. There's specifically a scene towards the end of the book between the Persian and Eric that was really good, and it's not in the film. The film also changes Eric's origins, which again doesn't hurt the movie per se, and those origins, they are tied to the Persians somewhat, but they don't ruin it per se. It's that that's not a terribly important change. The one big change though is the ending. And the movie changed the ending because of negative audience reaction. That's always a problem in book to movie adaptations. They have two different audiences. And what pleases the reading audience does not always please the movie viewing audience. So they made a change. And again, I think because of it, you lose a lot of the emotional impact of the book. I think it does hurt the movie in that regard. Although, as a film, it still stands up fine on its own. No problems there. Definitely worth a watch if you've never seen it before. Lon Chaney, absolutely fantastic makeup, and I think he really nailed the look of the Phantom as it's described in the book. The scene where he's in the costume of the Red Death, gorgeous costume. The skull mask, you could sort of see, his eyes peering through it. It's really well done. I also want to call out, his co-star, Mary Philbin, who played Christine. I thought she did a wonderful job in the movie. Sometimes it's difficult for performances in really old movies and especially silent movies to connect with a modern audience. Often because of the conventions of the time and how people acted. But I thought she was really good. The charisma really shone through. She comes across as smart and as a full character. I really enjoyed it. So, but again, that ending, it does take emotional heft away from the film. What I would really love to see, and here's my free idea for somebody out there in the entertainment industry who probably will never see this. I would love to see a very faithful adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera put to film. A costume drama, make it a period piece, make it several episodes of a series, perhaps. What comes to mind, maybe some of you other old folks out there remember, PBS used to have a great anthology series called Mystery. It's the first place I saw Hercule Poirot, the David Suchet version. First place I saw Jeremy Brett's Sherlock Holmes. Loved Mystery. It's hosted by Diana Rigg. Here's my idea. A good horror anthology for like a streaming channel. Each season does a very faithful adaptation of a classic book. And the anthology is hosted by Cassandra Peterson. Not her alter ego, but her. I think that'd be pretty cool. Anyways, if you're out there, steal the idea. I'd just love to get something good like that on TV. So, Phantom of the Opera. Great book. Good movie. I suggest you read it. I suggest you watch it. And there you go. That's it for Dad's Den today. And we will be seeing you hopefully pretty soon with some more reviews and some more toys and maybe some more $1 million ideas for streaming television shows. In the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button. Really helps me out. If you enjoy these videos in general, I'd love it if you'd subscribe. In the meantime here, until the next time we meet, have an awesome day. Be kind to people and get out there and create something. Get out there and make something beautiful. Bye-bye.